In this video, let's implement document updating. And so here in our update tour handler, let's start by making it an async function. Then our try catch block. And so I'm doing this very quickly now because we're already used to this at this point. Right? So this goes into the try block, and then I simply get this one here from the catch block of this other function. All right, so here we go. And so now what we need to do here at the beginning of this try block is to basically query for the document that we want to update and then update it. All right, and we can actually do that all in one command with Mongoose. And remember again that we're going to update a tour based on an ID. Okay, so it's a similar situation like this one here, where we find by ID. And now we can actually do something very similar, which is find by ID and update. So again, everything in one query. So let's do tour dot find by ID and update. Okay, so what do we need to pass in here? Well, of course, the ID, so that we can first find the document that is to be updated. So just like before, that is rec.params.id, and then the data that we actually want to change. And that data will be in the body, just like in the post request. So rec.body. Okay? And then actually as a third argument, we can also pass in some options. And we will do that. And the first option that I want to specify is new and set it to true. Because this way, then the new updated document is the one that will be returned. And since we want to send back that updated document to the client, we always want this method to actually return that new document. Okay, so this way it actually then makes sense to await this query and then save it to a new variable. So let's simply call it tour here, and then again await the result of this query. So all of these methods that we've been using on the tour so far, so find by ID and update, or well, not really create, but find by ID or find, all of these will return queries. So they are query methods, and let me actually show that to you in the Mongoose documentation. So up until this point, we didn't have a look at the documentation so far, and so let's quickly do that. So on the model, which in our case is tour, we have all these query methods, right? So you see find one, you see find by ID, which is just a shorthand for find one. Then you see find by ID and update, which is the one that we're currently using, and which in fact is just a shorthand for find one and update, where we're querying for an ID. So similar to what we had in the last lecture. Okay, and actually we can click on any one of these. So let's do the one that we're using currently. And that will then really take us to the API documentation, which shows us how to really use a certain method. So you see that we pass the ID, so the value of the ID to query by. We pass the object with the data to be updated, and we pass in an options object. And down here, we can actually see the options that we can set. And so remember, we just set new to true. And so as it says here, that will then return the modified document rather than the original. Now another one that we actually want to set to true is this run validators. So that each time that we update a certain document, then the validators that we specified in the schema will run again. Okay, and we will talk a lot about validators and validation a bit later in the section, but I'm gonna leave it here for now so that we basically don't forget it. Okay, so give it a save now, and actually I want to go back here just to show you how many methods we actually have in Mongoose. So on the model, we have all of these methods here that you see in this list. So for example, we used create before. We also used find. Okay, and so the ones that you see here in the top, they are available right on the model. and that in our case is the tour. Now down here you for example also see model.prototype.save, for example. And this one we actually also already used right when we first started to work with Mongoose. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with this, but in JavaScript, model.prototype always means an object created from a class, or in this case, created from a model. And so this save method here refers to a save method called on a document and not on a tour. And remember that that's exactly what we did. And I think I still have it here as a comment. Yeah, right here. So we had a tour, this new tour variable here, which was created from the tour model. And so this new tour here got access to the save method because that is part of the prototype object of this class. All right. Now I don't want to bore you with the fundamentals of JavaScript, but it is important in order to understand the documentation. Okay, because at some point you will need to use documentation because Mongoose is huge. And I will actually teach you a lot of the stuff that's important in there throughout of this course, but sometimes you will still need something that I didn't show you in this course. And so it's important that you really understand the documentation as well. Okay, and so again, when you see model.prototype here, you know that this save method here is going to be available on all of the instances created through a model, okay? And so not the model itself. So for example, if you tried tour.save, you wouldn't be able to use it. It would give you an error. But instead, if you tried save on a document created through the tour, then it would of course work. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And anyway, you see that we have a lot of other stuff. So we have the query, which we already talked about. Because for example, find by ID and update, or find by ID, all of these will return query objects. And so later on, when we're going to implement stuff like sorting or filtering, we will then use this query object. Okay, so let's go back. We kind of got off the track here by looking at the documentation. But again, I think it's really important to start looking at the documentation because a course like this can only take you so far. And I hope you already know that at this point. Okay, it's really important that you're also able to find information on your own, and I want to show you how to do that also in this course. Anyway, let's now actually also send this newly updated tour back to the client, which right now we're not doing because we have simply this updated tour here string. So let's get rid of that and simply send the tour. And remember that this in fact is actually this. So the tour property is set to the tour object, but thanks to ES6, we no longer have to do that when the property name has the same name of the value. Okay, so let's get rid of that. That makes our code look a bit better. Okay, and let's now test it. Back to Postman. Here we have the updated tour route. And so let's actually do it on this same ID that we used before. So this one. Then we come to the body here and let's change. Well, what are we going to change here? Well, let's change the price to like 500. So price 500. Send it. And indeed, this gives us the newly updated object with the price already set to 500. And if we now get all the tours, then that of course should be reflected here, and here it is. But now let's say that we set it to a string. Let's take a look at what happens then. Well, then we actually get an error, and that's because we run the validators again. So remember that we have, where is that? Oh yeah, here. So here we specify that the validators should be run again. And so right now, the price is no longer a number as it is expected, right? So in the schema, we say that the price should be a number. But of course, JavaScript or Mongoose actually cannot basically convert this string here to a number. But that is what we expect. So here it says kind should be number. And so, therefore, it gives us an error, simply because we're running the validators again. So let's put it back to 500, and then of course it's going to be back. All right, now keep in mind that we're actually doing a patch request here. Now if we were doing a put request, remember, then we would expect that the original object would be completely replaced with the new one that is sent in. Okay, and so in that case, it would no longer work the way we implement it here, because this one simply really updates the fields that are different here in the body. Okay, but anyway, I think that the patch method is actually way more useful, and so that's going to be the only one that I'm implementing here. Cool, so we have 3 of our 4 CRUD operations implemented, only one more left to go, which is going to be delete.